Well, hello, amazing parents, and welcome back to our series called Instant Toddler Obedience. In the last couple videos, I shared with you some pretty profound examples of how I discovered how God has so rigged it in our favor that we have a window of opportunity in the first 3 years of life to literally program our children for life. And in this video, I want to expand on something I mentioned in the last video, and that is when your toddler says no. We've misunderstood what this is. And so today, the title of my message is The Meaning of No. So when your 2-year-old-ish begins to say no to you, we always think of that, oh, that's his sin nature uh, exerting itself. He's expressing his, that defiance. And because we've been told that kids were born with this active sin nature, and that's actually not true. We actually activate it when we teach them the knowledge of good and evil, which is what activated the sin nature in Adam and Eve. So no is actually a healthy developmental stage. That's right. So when your baby is born, he does not know that he's a separate being from you. And that's why he cries when he can't see you. If you leave the room, he cries because he doesn't know where he is. So then about 8 months or so, 6 to 8 months, they start realizing that they're a separate being from you. And that's when what we call separation anxiety begins. And that can last through even 2 years old. So at this point, the child begins to understand that he's a separate being, and that, is disturbing to him because it's like you're his source of food, of comfort, of everything that he needs. So being separate from you creates anxiety. So we call that separation anxiety. Well, around 2 years old, they start being comfortable with this being separate from you, and they realize, I have my own opinion. I have my own voice. I have my own desires, and I can express them. And so he begins practicing this independence in the very most basic form by saying no. When you say, do this, he says, no. Or when you say, do this, he does that. And that's what he's doing. He's simply exercising his individuality. So this is a good thing. We definitely don't want to squelch their no. We don't want to take away their voice or their individuality, but we do need to direct it. And so you may have caught this in the last example where I shared what I did when my son said no to me when I was teaching him to be obedient. So what I did is I simply recognized his no, and then I ignored it. Remember, we are creating what we want, not identifying what we don't want. So if I focus on his no and I say, no, don't say no to me, which is what we do, then there's a lot of things going on. But for the sake of this study and the way we've been approaching this is that that's a fact. He said no, big deal. I'm going to create what I want. So I simply just go right over his no, right past it. And I just, again, reiterate, you always do what mommy says. And so I'm not discounting his no. I'm allowing him to express it, and I don't let it affect me. I just recognize that he's expressing his individuality, and then I just reaffirm that you always do what mommy says. And when we can take the emotion out of this interaction, because that when we see that no as defiance, it riles us up, and we get worked up and we get upset because like this little thing that's barely able to talk and walk is defying me, and I don't know what to do. Well, now you know what to do, because now you know what's going on. He's not defying you. He's simply expressing his individuality and using his voice. So in the famous book by Henry Cloud and John Townsend called Boundaries, they talk about this. And what they say in regards to boundaries is that no is our most basic form of boundary. So if I can't say no to you, I have no boundary. I'm a complete doormat. I am your victim. And so even though this 2-year-old is completely dependent on you, when you recognize the importance of this no, that it's his voice, it's his individuality, and it's his most basic boundary, you do not want to destroy his no. You don't want to take away his ability to say no. Think about it. If he's taught never to say no to an adult, where does that leave him? That leaves him with no protection, no boundary. And it's whatever an adult says to do, then he just does it. And I'll let you take that where you want to in your imagination, but it's not healthy. As we get older, what do you see? Adults that don't know how to say no. Why is that? Because they were trained in those formative years and programmed to believe that saying no was a bad thing, instead of recognizing it as a very useful tool in our life. We all need the ability to say no. I think every pastor knows that person in his church, or persons that just can't say no. Whenever they need a job done, they ask that person. But you read stories about these people and how they're miserable because they don't know how to say no. So that's the meaning of no. It is their individuality developing. It's not defiance. It is their voice being expressed. It is their most basic boundary. So please do not take away your child's no. And when you give him a command or a directive and he says no, once you have implemented what I'm teaching you in this series, just ignore it and go past and continue creating the behavior that you want with your words and your faith and your response. Because remember, whoops, it's not there anymore, that your response is the variable in this whole thing called parenting. So I hope that's helpful to you. We have one more video in this series, and this is going to be some other things you want to be on the lookout for and aware of, so that you don't sabotage this process and destroy the good results that you can get by using this method. So until then, take care and God bless. I'll see you in the next and final video.